Greg Johnson, welcome to the Guided Gigs program. How you doing, my brother?
I'm doing good, bro. Thank you for having me, man.
It's an absolute honor, man. And again, like I feel like even though we've only had a few moments to be in the same building, like to be honest with you, I feel like you're my blood brother and my musician brother, my creative brother, and my brother in the Lord. And yet, you
Mhm.
and I have not had. This might be our maybe fifth or sixth time actually being able to speak face to face.
Yes, sir.
Well, more virtually anyway.
Yes, sir.
And so this is such a pleasure for me. And this is why I want to make sure that now that I finally have you on the show, just kind of wrap this up. I'm not gonna talk about how long was it. We're not gonna talk about that. We're not gonna talk about how many times we were supposed to have you on the show.
No, it may be good
Really?
depending on where the conversation goes.
Okay. So we have been trying to do this for a long time. Greg is an extremely busy man. He is doing so much for the kingdom at his church at Northview Christian Church. And I just want to give him the chance first to introduce himself to you because I feel like there's so much that we can get from this conversation. But first, Greg, yeah, just say hi to the people. Just tell them who you are, give them the elevator speech, where you serve, and get them that little beginning that we're going to go deeper later. But just tell them who you are and what you do.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Greg Johnson. I'm currently living in Dothan, Alabama, originally from Hollywood, Florida. I serve as the director of music here at Northview Christian Church under Dr. Hart Ramsey, and yeah, that's that.
And that's that. See, man, a few words, unless you get them behind a keyboard or the right key, both keyboards. You speak on the keyboard and you speak on the keyboard when you write. You have written blog posts for God and Gigs before. I wanted to put that in. You were one
Yes,
of
sir.
the first people who actually responded to my call when I wrote the book God and Gigs for quotes and discussions on the book. As a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, you actually bought. Am I right? Am I right about this? Did you get the study guide for your team?
Yes, sir.
Man, that blessed me beyond words. You had so much faith in what I was sharing. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to make this work and make these words go together.
No, it
But
was necessary, very necessary.
I appreciate it, man. So tell me a little bit about, what you started with. Because I honestly don't know the answer to this question. Where did you start in ministry? Did it start in your family? Did it start with your church? Did it start with the choir? Don't worry. I totally understand. You got a lot of guys trying to get in touch with you. I know, even now.
No, no, no.
It's okay. So tell me a little bit about your beginnings, man, because I honestly don't know this. I do know some of your background, but not all of it. So were you one of those guys that was born in the church pew, born on the organ, or was there another route that you took to, even getting started in church ministry and music?
So yeah, I was born in church, in a musical family. Mom's side full of singers. My dad was a musician, so before he went into pastoral ministry, he was a musician, an organ player. So um, let's say grew up in Hollywood in my mom's home. By the time I turned 16, I transitioned to be with my dad, and from there, I took music seriously. And yeah, it's been full time since.
What was I love this question. So I'll ask you, what was the first song that made you feel like, whoa, like I need to get serious? There's always like one song or artist or challenge that you listen to, and it's like you spend hours on that song, or you spend, a lot more time. And like you said, you got serious at 16. So I'm just curious, like what musically was there something that like clicked and
Hmm.
said, all right, I want to be able to do this, or I want to be able to play like that guy or this person? Like, was there like a key for you musically?
As a drummer in the eighth grade, I skipped so much. As a drummer in the eighth grade, it was A Night in Tunisia.
Okay.
I was in the all county band with Ed Kaye.
No, really. Okay,
Ed
those who
Kaye
are
and
not
Esther,
listening, everyone who's not a jazz fan, even if you're not in South Florida, you need to look up Ed Kaye.
Ed Kaye and Nestor Torres.
Oh,
And so that was the first jazz song I had to learn how to play on drums. On
I didn't know
keys.
that. You were doing drums and keys?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, I'm learning. I'm learning.
Yeah.
Awesome.
On keys, I think it was choir song, The Holy Place by Ricky Dillard. I was
Wow.
challenged by Pastor Mark Cooper, one of our hometown heroes. I'm going too far, but he challenged me to learn that song when I wanted to learn more. And so he challenged me to actually learn that whole record.
Got it. That's so important. You mentioned Pastor Mark Cooper,
Hmm.
some of these other legends in your life in South Florida, and you and I both have South Florida. I actually came to South Florida. That's the difference. I grew up in North Florida, where you are now closer to my hometown
Right. You
in
know, I didn't
Dothan.
know
Yeah,
that. I didn't know until now.
yeah. I grew up in Pensacola, Florida. So we switched places. I am Panhandle and Mobile and Biloxi and all those areas are like my stomping grounds growing up. And then I came down south to South Dade and South Miami and
Hmm.
down here. So I didn't know about the Ingram Singers until I got here. I didn't know about the Mark Coopers and Florida Mass. I didn't know that there was such a rich musical heritage in Miami, because I got here really not the, it's not want to say the end of it, but there was kind of like a heyday
Hmm.
when all that was happening. So did you experience a lot of that? And like, what were the legends that you were looking up to?
Definitely Mark Cooper and Friends. Um, I see if I start a name, I'm going to forget.
Now it's okay. Just name a few. We know we're not going
I
to
mean,
hashtag them. Don't worry. They're not going to.
we're loaded. Mark
Yeah.
Cooper and Friends. There was Kendall Hunter,
Yeah.
Trent Phillips, the Ingram Gospel Singers, um, Melvin Dawson, who actually gave me my start. We can talk about that later. Reverend Melvin
Yeah.
Dawson, and a host of so many others.
Man, those names again, I was a kid. I was
Mhm.
maybe 18, 17. How old? You said 16. So what would you say was a big break? And I hate saying it in music like big break. That doesn't sound right, but you know what I mean? Like your first, was it a major tour? Was it a major artist? What was the time that like you felt like, okay, now they're trusting me with a lot? Like what was the first time that like maybe you had something like that where you realized you were starting to move to be a pro?
I would definitely say the Memorial Day midnight musicals that Kendall Hunter used to host at Holy Temple Number One in Fort Lauderdale.
Wow. Okay. You're
When
specific. You remember all of that.
I remember, it's when he called me to play main keyboards. First, I played alongside of Charles Davis, I believe that's his name, and they got to a point to where I became the main guy at the midnight musicals. And for me, I thought that was like everything because everybody, who was somebody, they were there. Mhm.
That is beautiful. And what did that feel like? Like, did you have some people I've heard are intimidated? Some people feel like, oh, I belong here. I've been waiting for this. Some people have a mix of confidence and you know what I mean? What was the feeling that you had once you got to that chair?
Um, the feeling I had looking back now is probably it shouldn't have been it, but it was acceptance,
Hmm.
identity. Yeah,
So you
I,
felt like God kind of
I
like
felt affirmed.
affirm, okay, nice. I hear you.
Yeah, yeah,
That's really cool. And the fact that you have come up under, people like the Coopers, like the Hunters, like your dad,
yes,
clearly
sir.
that you kind of saw this as a path that you were going to be headed on.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Now I got to ask you, we were just talking about some of these deep waters, musically speaking, right?
Hmm.
You are well versed. You've obviously paid your dues,
I paid him
but
to say,
wait, what?
paid him to say all of this stuff.
No, you didn't pay. No, no. If trust me, I would have sent the invoice by now. That was the case. So, no. But here's the thing, man. I really do also wonder, as you're in this church world, because we're really talking to creators, musicians, artists, people who have a faith background, but also are in the mainstream.
Hmm.
I'm curious in terms of your formation, your spiritual formation, when you're in the church world, were you also getting like that? Were you also really feeling like God was calling you to know what you were playing about?
Hmm.
Did you feel your spiritual growth matched your musical growth at that stage? Because a lot of us get in the stage and the platform and the music, but then we're pretty immature in terms of our life and our faith. So, how was
Yep.
your development? Because there's a lot that's coming at you when you're in that world.
Yes. So in the beginning, I had you know, it's coming up. I felt like an operational gift meant right standing in my walk, if that makes sense. I felt like the functionality of the gift determined where I was in my walk. And it
Mm.
wasn't until later I remember I was maybe about 17, 18 years old. I was on the organ. I'm not going to say any names where, but I was on the organs in the Pentecostal service. So you know how that goes. And I remember saying to myself, I've never seen any of this in the Bible. And I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I think it was in that moment I started to question, do I know what I believe? And I want to know, how did we get here? And that started my journey of studying from first century, the history of the church, up until now. Not that it was a bad thing, but I think that moment of questioning challenged, how much I knew and how firm I was in my walk.
Wow. So that's a big leap though. You didn't just pick up the
Yeah.
gospels. You didn't just pick up,
Mhm.
a Strong's concordance. You went deep.
Well,
So
history was my favorite lesson in school, so I just naturally love to read.
got it. Okay. So you went to really study. And that's why I respect you so much. We were just talking off air before we started
Mhm.
the recording about how we both had like this. I grew up Lutheran, talking about back in Pensacola where I grew up. So
Mhm.
we had to learn the catechism. I had to learn what Martin Luther believed. I knew about the 95 Theses and all these things. A lot of these
Right.
theological terms don't get talked about most times in musician or even look, let's just be honest, even in church circles now. Like
Yeah.
we don't discuss church history. We don't discuss deep theology. Usually we discuss this, it's usually over a hot button topic, right?
Mhm.
Something
Mhm.
comes up, there's a dividing line. Someone says, oh, the Bible says this, or someone says the Bible says that. And there's a big row on Twitter and Facebook about what people really believe. But you went there directly because you wanted to know, I guess the word would be affirm, right? You want to affirm what you were seeing and playing and being part of was what the Bible and what your faith was teaching. Is that a good way to put it?
Um, you're going back to the affirmation identity I spoke of earlier?
Yeah, but more in terms of what you started to affirm in terms of your beliefs.
Yes. I wanted to I was questioning, out of all the religions, why am I a Christian?
Ooh,
So from and if I wander off, pull me back in.
no, go, go,
Uh
go.
I started, in secret, people dabbling in Buddhism and monasticism and all of these other things, because I started questioning, like, I would hear, um those who were not Christians were essentially just reprobate and just, bad people. And I want to know what made us better than them. And the more I got into it, it wasn't that we were better. It was just, what our faith offered as opposed to the other faiths. That's what grounded me. As and it's not a knock to any faith. I know this is a platform that has many walks. I know we have musicians who are, so it's not a this isn't a bad,
No,
but
there's
for
no judgment here for sure.
yes, sir. So for me, it was just, why am I? That was the main question. Why am I a Christian? And I started having battles because I felt like there were parts of Christianity in other religions, until I started studying the resurrection, and that was like, you know, every Easter we would hear the sermon about, he died, he got up, but I never understood the significance of it. It was just a long nap. It was a 3-day nap until I really studied atonements and substitutionary, all these, you know.
No, I know, but no, here's the key. I want to make sure we're going to, like they say, like, you can't, I just said it wrong. Try to, you
Mhm.
can bring a man to water, you can put a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You're offering kind of like here's the water, here's the deep stuff that you can get into.
Yeah.
It's up to the people listening. So we're going to leave links. We're going to tell people, hey, if you want to start with this book, if you want to, so we're going to put links in the show notes and the description, and then so that people can go deeper
Yeah.
and understand what we're trying to say. But I wanted to ask you this follow-up question.
Mhm.
What did that do for you once you started answering those questions? You had doubts. You were very vulnerable just now and said, hey, I even checked out other religions just to
Mhm.
see what's up with this. And
Mhm.
I appreciate that because I've had that same intellectual struggle in my mind when you have things with evolution and creationism, have things
Mhm.
like the speed of light versus if you can see a star, how did the star's light get here if the world is only this without? I mean, I've had those. I'm a lover of science. I'm a lover of science. I had those same debates in my mind, and it made me kind of push back at
Mhm.
times. That okay, if I am having these doubts, am I really, really, truly who I say I am? And the one scripture that's always helped me, Greg, just kind of like to share with you, is where Bible says in Isaiah, come let us reason together. And also in Proverbs where it says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, but it's the glory of kings to search out a matter. And it just gave my intellectual curiosity freedom to say a God that can be questioned, can be trusted, because he could answer. There's always an answer. God always has an answer. So my question to you is, how did that help you in your life once you started reading and feeling like now you had some kind of foundation to stand on in terms of what you believed?
It gave me, is another word that we don't hear a lot, assurance. You know, we sing the song Blessed Assurance all the time, but it gave me a sense of security, and it gave me security not only here, but security that when I die.
Mm,
And death that's another subject that we don't really talk about. And you know, when it comes to death, even our view of death now versus the days of the Bible are very different. You know, when Stephen was getting stoned, he was happy. When Paul wrote about it, you know, he said, it's, you know, if I'm here, it's cool, but if I'm gone, it's even better.
yeah.
And that's not to take away from the reality of, you know, the pain that we feel of a lost one, but it's almost like we want heaven, but we don't want to transition there.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, we don't want to actually take that final step of saying, hey, you know, it's time to go. Or if our loved one, you know, if they're like 100 years old, we're still praying that they stay. No, let them go. You know.
It's yeah. C.S. Lewis had a great quote on this, and I can't remember it right now. But actually, no, I'll say it was G.K. Chesterton.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at the very end, he said that no, I think it was C.S. Lewis. I'm gonna get mixed up again. See, we're just all over the place.
But
But
you know,
there's a phrase. Yeah, they were buddies. But he
yeah.
said basically a phrase about heaven. That we are far too easily pleased. That's why I want to get to. I know that's the end of the quote. So he was saying that we go looking for all these things in earth that will never satisfy us. We
Hmm.
go looking, we go looking for satisfaction. We go looking for pleasure. We think that the earth is going to satisfy us. And I can pull this right back to creatives and musicians.
Hmm.
We think that everything within the church is like heaven. Like once people are shouting, once people are, that feeling, that emotional feeling is like, that's supposed to be it. And
Hmm.
God's like, nah, my firm belief is, and this is one of my little Alanisms, it's not anywhere in the Bible. I don't think any theologian would back me up. But my feeling is eternity is possible because we'll always be discovering new things about God. It's impossible for us to discover everything about God, which makes eternity possible. And so
There's no beginning and end.
there's no beginning in it because there's no
I
beginning
got it.
into God.
Right.
Therefore, if we're in the presence of God, there's no beginning in because we can always be learning. To me, that's what we miss out on. We think that there's something, infinite here that's
Hmm.
just going to keep feeding us. And it's not. There's, like you said, we run the song ends, the music ends, the
Hmm.
set ends, our lives end. There's an
Hmm.
end. With God, there's a never ending, but we get so wrapped up in what's here and here and now that we forget that the whole point of this life is to get to that next thing where we don't have an end.
Yeah. And that's the reason why that's like the main reason why we choose to be a Christian.
Mm,
I mean, of course there's a joy in sharing the gospel here, but it's the reward that we get when we leave here. That's why. It's the eternal life that he offers us for putting our faith in his finished work. That's why we're Christians. Bottom
beautiful.
line.
Man, see, and I told you I'm not afraid of going deep into the waters because again, somebody needs to hear this. It doesn't matter how many people are listening overall. Those people who are listening right now, I believe that God's going to like speak a word to them through what you're sharing. I want to go to what you shared with us on the blog post talking about grace and flaws. I don't know if you even remember the post, but it is stuck with me. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you quote it. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you go back.
Man.
But this is a key thing. Again, talking to those of us who are musicians,
Hmm.
you now work you work on the staff and serve on the staff at
Hmm.
Northview with Dr. Hart Ramsey, who's an incredible teacher.
Yeah.
And one of the things I know about him, even though I haven't had the opportunity to be under his teaching like you have, one thing I know he focuses on is the understanding of our humanity
Hmm.
versus God's divinity and
Hmm.
being able to walk closer and closer and closer to that standard without pushing people off the boat
Yeah.
when they fall off.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that you must have gravitated to. So you could talk a little bit about, serving under Dr. Ramsey. And then number two, that grace message, which I know is all over you. Like, where did that come from? That message that we have got to be more forgiving in terms of ourselves and then understanding what grace is all about.
So the first part you said, what is it like serving? Is that the first part?
Yeah, the first part. Yeah, I just want to know if did that message like hit you hard when you got to Northview, or was it something that you already believed in?
So back home, I think it was 2011. I started studying grace, and I would go over to a church. You're gonna probably laugh when I say this. Core Ridge Presbyterian
I'm
Church.
not. No, I know exactly what you're
Till
talking about.
Tilly Intervision was there at the time, and I would just go and listen to him, when I could in between services at Mount Bethel. So by the time I got here, I'm just gonna skip and consolidate
That's
this.
cool.
By the time I got here, um, I had been studying Pastor Ramsey for about 2 years. I was podcasting him whenever I could. I couldn't live stream because I was playing at another church.
Yeah.
But when I got here, um, the first thing the first thing he told me to do was read the book of Galatians. He said it's 6 chapters. Read one chapter a day.
Mm.
From there, he had me to read Romans 5, which is what he calls the chapter of grace in the Bible. If there's one chapter in the book of the Bible that you want to just delegate to grace, it's Romans 5. So after I finished those, he would just pour out, pour out. But for me, he's become like a father to me. And so we've had moments to where for the first time I'm sharing things about him that I've never shared. And this is not an indictment against mine because my father did me well. But there's some struggles that I share with him that I've shared with no one else. I would never let people get close to me because I would build, what we would call an ego, or uh and I think I wrote about this. If it's not in this blog, it's the upcoming blog,
Okay.
The Imposter. I think it's the
You
new
talked about. I can't wait to
yeah,
read this one.
and the shield. I've always That's the word I'm looking for, perfectionism, or perfectionist.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, let me deviate from it. When we speak of perfectionist, a lot of times people are saying, I just like for things to be right, this. No, we like to protect ourselves from criticism. So I grew up kind of finagling this guy to always be presentable, to be pristine, to be unblemished. But finally, I had to meet myself under this man. And I've had to say, my internet history contains this. I'm dealing with this, I'm dealing with that. And I remember sitting in the truck, and the way he fathered me in that moment, I would never forget. I felt like I went back to my 12-year-old self when I first got exposed to some things.
Mm-hmm.
But he fathered me, and it was the first time I experienced not being thrown away or criticized for a fault, for a wound, for a deficiency. And so I'm becoming that way because I've experienced it, and I know what it's like to literally be not only forgiven, but just to have someone do life with me, and in turn share their wounds. You know,
Mm.
to me, and I think that act is more Christ-like than any praise break, because when Jesus saw Thomas, the first thing he did was show him his wounds.
Oof.
It identified Thomas with his humanity. So when we expose ourselves in trusted circles, we're 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 essentially doing the things that Jesus did after his resurrection.
Wow.
It's how he was able to prove himself to Thomas that, hey, this is me.
That
It's
I have
okay.
that I have wounds.
Yeah.
Oh,
And Pastor says, and there's a quote, he says that the only man-made thing in heaven are the wounds in his body. And those wounds serve as intercession. He shows those wounds and pass. He's mine. He's mine.
that is unbelievable, Greg. Okay, so now I got to follow up. All right. Number one, so many ways we could go with this. And you see, before we started this conversation, we knew it was going to be with us.
We
Number
did.
one, let's back up first to the fathering.
Mm-hmm.
How important is that relationship? Because there are many musicians who don't have that, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe listening right now with a little bit of envy,
Yeah.
because they say, "Well, I've been looking for that. I would love to have a pastor that sees past my flaws, that helps me understand grace." I, just say how that's important to you. I'm not asking you to answer it for them. I
Yeah.
just want you to answer it for yourself. How
Mm-hmm.
important is that? Because I know somebody else is saying, "I don't have that."
For me, because we are Christian, I would say this: it is perhaps one of the most important relationships that I have right now. How it was developed, it was not developed by way of music.
All right.
Interesting. This is interesting. I got here maybe March 2015. I'm at the piano sitting down and I'm playing, and we were writing for the True Story album. And I was sitting here. Y'all can't see me, but he's literally sitting next to me. He looks over to me and he says, "You can really play." And I'm looking like, "But you hired me to be a music director." He said, "Well, I didn't hire you for your skill. You already had the endorsement of other people. I hired you because I got to know you and I got to know your heart." And what happened was we can before I knew it, we connected more on a theological level than the musical level, but not knowing where I was musically, he trusts me now with his music ministry.
That's so wow. I feel
You
like
know?
I want to rewind that, because or I'll let the people rewind that. They need to listen to that part again,
Yeah.
because in ministry and in
Mhm.
churches, so much we become gift oriented.
Mhm.
Um, we quote Proverbs 18:16 like it's the only verse in the Bible. Man's gift makes room for him, even though that gift was not talking about a
It's
talent; it was
it's
talking
it's
about
not
generosity and money.
it's
So
not talent.
I talk about that in the book. Okay, they could go get God in gigs, succeed as a musician without sacrificing your faith. Go buy the
Yeah.
book; you'll read about that. But the most important thing is what you just said about what his heart was about the ministry.
Mhm.
What solidified that connection between a pastor and a director of music or minister of music had
Mhm.
nothing to do with music.
No. He
Ah,
it was the bridge. He knew I could play, but that wasn't the first thing he got to know about me. Well, the first thing I got to know, and I think that's at the same time he wanted to know, was what do we believe? Because when you start talking about music, I look at music ministry this way: we're pastoring the church until the senior pastor gets there.
I like that.
So now that goes into song selection, right? That goes into the responsibility of the atmosphere, the words you're putting in people's mouths when they worship. It's a whole ball game, you know? And so, you're singing stuff and you don't know the mission statement because you're just there for a check.
Oof.
I'll say it like this: if the check is the only thing you're getting from the church, you're not getting anything, because within 2 minutes, your phone, you can literally spend that whole check on the bill, and now you're empty for the next week or 2 weeks or whatever your pay schedule is. What else
Mm,
do you have at that point? Discipleship is a lost it is a lost cause in the church, and musicians and pastors are, for some reason, these are the biggest war in the church in the church. When in Second Kings, people's miracles were dependent on this same relationship.
exactly. And I got to say this because you just took me there. That here are two of the most elevated positions.
Hmm.
It would be like David and Jonathan, right?
Yes, sir.
Or like you said, or in terms of the minstrel, Elisha and the minstrel, right?
Hmm.
But it would be like they go two separate ways,
Hmm.
in the middle of the battle, and don't even confer on how we're going to battle. We're going to go. You got the general and the second in command, but they are totally on two separate identities
Oh
for
yeah.
whatever reason. And the battle's raging or whatever the mission is. And then we wonder why the mission fails over and over again. And people don't really see the deliverance and all the other things. You can use all the Christianese we want. It's
Mhm.
just common sense that you should be lockstep understanding what your pastor, your leader, it wants to do. And,
Mhm.
I know Dr. Ramsey has talked about this.
Yeah.
The pastors have to do what he did with you and shepherd and pull the musician in beyond just what their gifting is. If that was the case, I think all this church hurt we hear about in music ministry would be a
Mhm.
thing of the past. Do you agree?
Yeah. 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 Discipleship, it's discipleship is missing there. It's almost like we've changed pastor for employer, although I'm
Mm.
kind of contradicting myself.
No, I don't think
But
so.
it becomes the main identity. Now it's just trading hours for dollars, or hey, I need this slot filled, I'll give you this. Okay, I'll do it. Boom, boom, boom. And there are some churches that are not even requiring their musicians to even stay in and get the word. And it's just no care for the soul at all. You know, I just need this job done, and that's that. You're paid, the music is good, we're good. And that's it. And there are musicians, believe it or not, starving. I've had musicians literally come to me because they don't have a relationship with their pastor. And now I'm one of the only ones that they trust. Like, hey, we've had a mutual friend that says, I don't trust these pastors. I trust you with my life. And that's a big thing to say.
Yeah, that's a scary thing to say.
It is a very scary thing to say, because while believers should, like they said, bread and continuing the apostles' doctrine, you're serving under a man where there's no trust. Or, do you even believe what they say? Do you know what you believe? I mean,
Mm. This is so. I mean, it is so heavy. That
mhm,
moment, that moment when you just like said, "Do you know what you believe?" and then you stop. That moment is heavy
yeah,
because if you don't address that issue, I cannot tell you how much hurt I have gone through in my personal life
mm,
having three men who have led me spiritually in my life, who I would trust with my life, all three of them. Thank God I've only had three pastors, and each one has been God ordained for the season. And my current one is this trip right now that I'm on, that I would have been on, versus the thing that I told you about that
yeah,
I would have been on. The reason why I could go to that farm in Georgia and sit at that man, just listen, is because I know that he would literally go to bat in hell for me if he had to.
mhm, mhm,
um that kind of relationship, and I think we're clearly going to this waters where it's so important that if people do not have that relationship, first they understand it's necessary. And I think, the Bible talks about like seeking God while he may be found. I think the same way you seek God while he may be found, you got to
mhm,
seek these relationships. You got to humble yourself and be honest. If you're in a place where maybe the pastor has not served you in this case, but if you're not seeking it, you can't be mad when you don't find it.
you can't,
Like,
because
you know,
in reality, he or she may depend on,
right.
they may have so much on their mind and it's not intentional. And sometimes you have to initiate that conversation. Maybe offer them the breakfast, or start with a simple Bible question that you may have an answer to, just to get their perspective. Hey, I was reading this, and could you share some of this, with me? And I found that pastors, when they see that their musicians are serious about their walk, it brings them joy.
Mm. And
Well,
they're happy to reciprocate.
yeah,
I think
because once you kind of start that conversation, you cannot stop a pastor from talking.
that's so true.
If they're a teacher, once you start them to going, like how we do sometimes, once they start, it just flows.
Yeah. And I think a key of that is that humility, because
Hmm.
maybe you do have the answer to the question. Maybe you're good with certain things, but just being willing to open the door. I saw this actually in a documentary I was watching. I'm trying to remember where I saw this. I think it was like a football coach. And the football coach said, "My door's open anytime." And he was right about, actually, I knew who it was. It was actually, we had him down here. It was Butch Davis, who
Okay.
was a UM's coach, right? And all that kind of stuff. But basically, the whole story is he said a kid came into his door right before he was going to be introduced in his new job. So it was right before a press conference. He's literally getting dressed to go in front of cameras, CNN, ESPN, whatever. And the kid said, "Hey, coach, you said I could ask you a question anytime. I got a question." That coach delayed the press conference, sat down, and answered the student's question. And guess what? It was a question about whether he's going to have prayer meetings in the team. There's a question about the Bible. And later on, that student went back to Coach Davis and said, that was a test. I wanted to see if you were going to follow through. You said your door was open. Now, how much more would a pastor, that's a football coach, man. How much more if we just gave our pastors and our leaders the opportunity to say, "Hey, you said you're interested in the word. You say you want me to develop. Let's open the door to that. Like, let me knock on the, let me show you that I do want to grow as a believer, as a man or woman of God. Let me actually show you that the door is open in terms of me, and let it develop." If that student had never walked in there and said, "Oh, no, he's too busy," you know what I mean? He never would have found out that that door was actually open, that he was going to answer that question.
And sometimes this can be initiated during the hiring process, during the initial interview.
Yeah.
Sometimes the conversation that happened there kind of sets the tone of the relationship. If it's about, "Hey, I need this amount of dollars and that's it," then that's
What you're going to get.
right. I remember when I went to it was Antioch Baptist Church, and I made it my business just to ask something. And I remember I asked Pastor Jackson. I said, "What does Primitive Baptist stand for? I see Baptist, I see missionary, I see this is," and that conversation lasted maybe about 20 minutes, and I gained a better understanding that missionary Baptist was simply that, they pride themselves on order. And so I understood the service better. I understood, like, they were people of order when it comes to the service, when it comes to meetings, everything. And, our relationship to this day is like this. Whenever I come home, he's like, "Hey, if you're not busy, come by and sit in." You know?
Wow. Because you showed interest and you showed that you valued
Yes, sir.
his knowledge and his authority
Mhm.
in that place. And just like, there's a lot of musical pastors, Dr. Ramsey being one of them,
Yeah.
who once you open the door to that, like you said, sitting at the organ, he respects what you do musically. And I'm sure, with the size and the scope of your involvement now in that music side,
Mhm.
that's got to be validating to you to know that he also trusts you with the music, while he himself is an incredible musician.
But
So
but
how
and here's the thing, I didn't mean to cut you off, but he's also the secret weapon because there's a lot that I've gotten wrong here. And I have to, and the other part is that I get to pull on him because he too was a minister of music,
Mm,
and he's been down this way. And so there are times where he'll say, "I need this," and I implement it and it works. You know, that's another thing that the pastors are, some would say, are the is the head worship leader. You know,
I agree with that.
I've heard that. So a
Yeah.
lot of times it's simply asking, you know, what's the vision? What's the sermon series? You know, how do we go into, here's another word, liturgy? How do we create a consistent,
A word that is never
you know,
mentioned in 99.9. Some people are like, what's a lit? What did he say? Lingerie? No, he didn't say
but
laundry. He's
but
liturgy.
we throw it out when we say liturgical dance.
Man, look, you just made me want to just drop everything and let's just, gosh. Let me tell you one thing that did actually, this bothered me. And I know this person that said this is a friend of mine, so I'm not going to throw him out there. It's just when he said it, it bothered me in a certain direction. When I first started guiding gigs, I quoted a lot of historical and biblical stuff. It was pretty highbrow. Like I was quoting stuff from Dante, and I was just getting quotes from anywhere, and a
Hmm.
lot of it was historical. And he said, people don't quite get that. They. I love what you're doing with guided gigs, but you got to be, don't be so intellectual. Basically, what he was saying. I understand what he was saying in a marketing standpoint, but from a knowledge standpoint, I think once what is it? When you start giving people just milk, all they want
Mhm.
is milk. When Paul says you should be eating meat,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think here's where we're at. Like, we as worship leaders, as musicians, as creatives, and again, we're talking to people outside the church too.
Mhm.
This is not just a conversation about worship musicians and their
Yeah.
pastors. This is a conversation for anybody in any creative space,
Mhm.
anywhere. If you
You
don't
have a
have
boss.
if you have a boss, if you don't know what you believe and you're not opening that door to understanding how somebody relates to you and how you relate to them, you're basically in that same kind of boat where you're just on two different islands and you wonder why things aren't working. Because
Mhm.
that concept of unity, I think, applies no matter where you are. But yeah, I just wanted to go to that direction because, like I said, there's a lot of people listening that probably say, I don't have that. Where can I find that? I wasn't as blessed as Greg to connect with my pastor, even if I don't necessarily serve in the church in the worship ministry. What would you say would be, if you just had to give somebody like that open door, like what you mentioned conversation.
Mhm.
Um, and let's talk about you specifically. You picked up some books, you said it. So what was your entry to really getting deeper? Like was it a certain book? Was it a certain author? What would you say to someone that says, okay, I need to know what I believe. I need to start digging a little deeper than just, Sunday morning service.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Are we going heavy into theology or just something that we'll start with
I would just, yeah,
just
don't worry. Like I said, we can always make a list later and we'll do like the top 10 Greg Johnson's top 10. We do that
Oh
later.
man.
But just pick one or two. It can be random. It doesn't have to be the book, right? Just a couple that like
Mhm.
really helped you.
Yeah. So I would say there's a book called Because He Loves Me. I read it once a year, every year.
Mm.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, once a year every year.
Once
Yeah.
every year.
Once every year.
Whatever. I read it every year. It's written by Elise Fitzpatrick. It's a very simple, very understandable, but it's loaded with the gospel in a way that a teenager can understand it.
Mm.
I recommend it to everybody. That one,
Because he loves me. Okay.
Because He Loves Me. Um, another one that I'm a Brendan Manning fan, so it, and this may be a little far out, but it was a book called The Ragamuffin Gospel. And I only mention it because it was the first book that helped me understand that God loves me in spite of and not because. It's not conditional. It just is. That was the book that literally like changed my life and challenged a lot of what I believed. Is there a demerit system? Is there a scorekeeper? If I well, let's if I died, uh, this can get really
Go, come
interesting.
on. Don't
If
you
if
tease me like
if
that,
if
Greg
if
Johnson.
if so traditionally you didn't want to be caught doing something unrighteous. And if you do something unrighteous, you better make sure you repent. Because if you don't repent, then you're automatically going to hell because you
Like
did
right,
not repent.
like being caught, like the old school being caught on in the club and you have a
Being
heart
caught in the
attack in the
club,
club or something.
yes. Being caught in the club. Let's say a person steal a candy bar and they die with the candy bar
In their
in their
pocket.
pocket.
Yeah.
And this can go way left, but for the sake of the show, I'll stay there. He was the first person that that convinced me that the sins were forgiven 2,000 years ago,
Mm.
and they're still being forgiven now, as long as I'm putting my faith in Christ. It's not okay, all of these sins are forgiven, but because you didn't repent for this one sin, now you're going to hell. No, that's not the gospel. No.
That's so powerful. And it's so important, again, for musicians. You mentioned the perfectionism.
Hmm.
We have so, like, we're recording this during Mental Health Awareness Month, May's Mental Health Awareness Month. And I love how so much of this echoes what the world is now understanding is that if we don't have a core understanding
Hmm.
of who we are and identity and beyond our performance, we're chasing a rabbit.
Mhm.
We're always chasing perfectionism. We're chasing identity from the wrong sources when God just kind of says, here, I'm offering you who you always were without you having to chase it.
Mhm.
And I think so much of our stress and our anxiety, and especially in music, our desire to be pleasers and man pleasers and women pleasers and make everything about, the moment being right so I can feel right.
Yeah.
So much of that comes from that misunderstanding of what you just said, that somehow if I do everything right, I'm accepted. If I get the song right, I'm accepted. If the people clap, I'm accepted. If I follow all the rules of the church, the commandment style righteousness, right? The letter that brought death. If
Come
we,
on,
if,
don't do that to me.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying you pull it out of me. I just want to open that door to people again. If they
Mhm.
want to go deeper, I want them to hear this because this podcast is so important that we don't ever just assume that someone's like, oh, they're going deep. Nah, there are people that are hungry for, especially now, man, in 2021, with what we just saw, with what's happening, even as we're recording in the
Mhm.
Middle East. Come on,
Yeah.
man. It's time for people to know what they know and know
Mhm.
why they know it. Or else, we're just, like you said, Sunday after Sunday, we're just kind of like, we're missing what could be ours. We're, trading a check, like you said, and not really getting what God wants for us.
Yeah.
And that's to have that confidence and that assurance, that affirmation that you said. Like even Jesus needed to be affirmed, man. He said, this is my beloved son. Jesus needed to hear that. How
And that was before he did a single work.
didn't do a single thing,
The
just
first
walked
thing
up.
that, yeah, he heard audibly that he was accepted, and the Father was pleased in him. For us, that's found in Ephesians 1, I believe, 1 and 3, where it says that God, it gave him great pleasure for him to accept us,
Mm.
before the foundations of the world. So, our life for the Christian, Jesus is our prototype. Before we do anything, we are accepted, period. And if, if, if we're rooted in that, then what we do is it comes from that place and not to gain or to maintain or to earn, but it's more humility and gratitude. So what I said earlier, that it'll be good to tell the people why it took us so long,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything wasn't a technical difficulty. Some of that was the perfectionist in me. That part you did not know. I remember
Wow.
that there was one, and I remember there was one we were supposed to do around 6 o'clock, and I got the hour mixed up,
I
and you were like, "We
I
can
I
still go."
I honestly lost track, but
Yeah,
I remember there were
a,
several.
a lot of it was running because, and here's the thing, it was, I want to sound crazy. I can't. I don't have control of this. I can't
Mm,
punch in. I can't edit. And I'm analyzing, like I'm talking now, but I'm analyzing to make sure that I don't have a Grammarly check right now live. It's I'm being so honest right now. Like
that is, dude, I appreciate you so much because
that's what a
that's
lot of this
real.
was about.
That's
It was
real.
fear of, I'm gonna, some of my subject and verbs are gonna disagree, and I'm gonna say finna. It's that type of thing to where it's wanting to present yourself as spotless and have it all together. And man, let's do this sharpen up. You know what? Okay.
You know what verse comes to mind? And I don't think I have it. I don't know if it's First or Second Corinthians, but I know you guys, again, we're doing the perfection thing right now. I'm worried people are going to check me on my chapter and verse. But Paul says, brother, I do not even judge myself.
Hmm.
When he gets to that point where he's trying to defend himself against some of those people who are talking about his ministry, and he's like, look, I don't judge you. I don't judge. I don't even judge myself anymore. And then he does, by the way, he does then lay down the law about why he is who he is and
Mm-hmm.
why he has acted out what God had given him as far as being a father to that ministry. But so many times he does the whole I count it as rubbish thing. Like right after that, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yep.
Like I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do under God. And so I appreciate you being honest about that because So again, you're freeing a lot of people who either haven't done their platforms, haven't gone out there, written their books, they haven't written the song, they haven't sung in front of people. They're
Yep.
all thinking the same thing you were thinking, which is, what are they going to say? What are they going
Yeah.
to say? And it's an honest feeling, but it's something that if you step through it, you go to the other side and you're like, nothing happened. Like the worst that could happen is nothing. And usually it's nothing that happens.
And I remember writing this line in the upcoming blog. I said, we build someone that everybody loves, but nobody knows.
Craig, why did you not write this yet? Oh my gosh.
It's you have it. I think we're gonna do it
I'm
in
going to
like a
find it. Okay,
5-part.
say that again.
I'll send it to you tonight.
Well, say it again because we just let them know they're going to have to go read this. Go ahead.
We end up building someone that everybody loves, but nobody knows. I think that's the imposter section of
I'm stealing that, and I'm going to. I'm sorry. Because I know it's a sin, but I'm going to borrow it forever.
Man, take it because it's a thing. So here we are. So 2 Corinthians 3, right? My personal reading of that is Moses, the veil. It's sort of like we're keeping this veil, and what Paul is saying is that to keep from people to seeing the glory
Right.
faded.
Right.
And I think let's say, what do you call these shots? Your favorite author.
Okay.
He takes a picture in 1995. Nice. In 2015, you see that same picture on his new book from 1995. In 2020, he's using that same picture. That's, we don't want to progressively show people like, hey, I'm aging, I'm this. We want to show this glamour shot that this is boom. And then when you meet him, it's like, that's not how you look here. It's because I've always presented to you this image.
And that's all the Instagram and social media is preaching, is is preaching, maintain an image that doesn't
brand has literally disguised so many people from being who they really are, because it takes so much work to maintain a particular brand, a particular look, a particular keeping up with snapshots, and let me edit this, and it's cool, but there's some down parts to it.
Yeah. I agree, man. Greg, we could do this. We're going to do this more often. That's what we're going to say, because we could do this all night. And I just want to just continue to dig deeper into, this is the why behind the what. Everything we're saying right now, if we don't sell another record, if we don't have another person come pat us on the back, but if someone can see us working through this life and actually presenting the image, the right kind of image, which is follow me as I follow Christ, right? Showing our wounds, talking about the vulnerability, being honest with things. If we have more musicians, creatives, and freelancers doing that, like it would be a whole nother landscape in the world. Like it would just be more freedom. And I just think of, you were talking about Galatians, you go back right back to that, the fact that he was really trying to free them in Galatians because they had adopted all these mindsets to kind of lock them back in. And it's like, who cut in on you and cut you off and put these weights back on you? You did that. So everything you're sharing is like telling people, let's drop the weights. Let's get back to authentic relationships with our leaders and our pastors. Let's get back to knowing what we believe. And let's get back to actually accepting that God loves us for who we are, not for what we do. Man, that was, I know you're not talking about sermon, but literally you just did a 3-point
not
right
as you
there.
should, and I'll say, and not as you should be.
Exactly. No shoulds here, man. Look, I know you're not a big social media person, but at least tell them how to follow Northview, how to connect with, what Northview is doing. And if they want to follow you as well, just give them all the socials and stuff like that so they can keep up with what you're doing in ministry with Dr. Ramsey.
Yeah. So follow the church. I'll plug us in. Northview Christian Church on all platforms. Twitter, it's NCC Family. For me, it's let's see,
I knew this. I was waiting for this. Yeah. We're going to work on the A. We're going to get
Instagram. It is Greg. Hold on, let me pull my phone out. This is sad. Oh,
I can't wait. I'm leaving all of this in, by the way. This is a editing moment right now where I just want people to know that Greg did not know his own Instagram.
I
That's how
was about to say,
dedicated he
hey,
is. Trust me, I will put it in the notes. You don't have to read it. It will be in the notes. I'll make it for you. I worked so hard to even get a selfie of you. My daughter took your picture at a Trent's conference because you didn't even have a headshot. You remember that? My
I
daughter had to
remember.
take your headshot. So we're
Yeah,
gonna work on it. You don't need to be perfect. See, there's your perfectionism. You don't need to be perfect. We just need to
yeah.
get it out there.
I took some
Only
pictures for my birthday last year, so I can send you one.
your birthday last. Okay, we're gonna stop with that. All right. You got to listen to yourself. Greg, this has been amazing. God bless you, brother. We're going to make sure to do this again and
Yeah.
again. What you're sharing, so important. And I bless you and I thank you for making it happen, my man.
Thank you for having me, bro.